You're live.
All right. We apologize for running a few minutes late as we were on another meeting, but this is the Board of Education meeting for the Plainville Board of Education meeting for January 11th. I just want to make sure that we do have all our board members on here that were on the other meeting. I'm trying to do a head count. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is Deb on here? Deb Hardy? Yep, there she is.
I am.
I think we're good. I think we got everybody. So everybody made the jump over. So
Yeah, it looks good.
we do apologize for running a few minutes late. And we'll call the meeting to order. And the first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. White, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That leads us to our special presentations, the much awaited Portrait Pioneer Awards. Mr. LePage, I think you're going to take this away.
I am. I'm very excited to start our new Portrait Pioneer Awards. I know we had the Everyday Hero recognitions for the last few years, and just a way of honoring members of our staff who have gone above and beyond to be that everyday hero to someone else. And this is aligned with that, also being an everyday hero, but really aligned to our new Plainville Portrait of the Graduate. So that's where the portrait comes from, Portrait Pioneers. So I'm just going to read the description that I put on the form, on which a Google form that allowed our staff members and our families to nominate a member of the school community. It could be anyone from a teacher, an administrator, custodian, a secretary, office professional, anybody they want to, who they believe is fitting of the Portrait Pioneer Award. So as I had written it, in the spirit of our school district's ongoing focus to inspire, prepare, and engage all Plainville students to be college and/or career ready, the Plainville Community Schools Portrait of the Graduate was developed to define and outline the critical skills necessary to be successful upon graduation. Students who embody the Plainville Community Schools Portrait of the Graduate model are collaborative, communicative, innovative, mindful, and resilient. To reinforce the key Portrait of the Graduate characteristics and to recognize school district faculty and staff members who demonstrate and model these traits for our students, we have developed the Portrait Pioneers Recognition Program, as I had said, similar to the Everyday Hero Recognition Program, where you can nominate an employee who embodies those qualities that I mentioned with the Portrait of the Graduate. And I offered that up as an opportunity to nominate colleagues, or as a parent to nominate someone who works for the district. So I had I actually had 9 nominations so far, and I chose 3 that I thought were really excellent, and I wanted to use this first opportunity to honor our Portrait Pioneers. So I'm going to start with Lily Corniel, our EL Equity and Student Support Specialist, and she was nominated by Diana Lomenzo. So I'm going, if you don't mind, I'm going to read the nomination, and I couldn't agree more. But above all of the above was Miss Lomenzo's comment in reference to the explanation about collaborative, communicative, innovative, mindful, and resilient. All of the above, I have been collaborating with Lily in her new role supporting equity in Plainville. Lily is a forward thinker and reflects on the work that is happening. We have collaborated on creating social justice read-alouds for various grade levels within the district. Since Lily has taken on her new role, she has been in high gear looking for grants and other opportunities to bring back to the district. Lily is a team-oriented player who loves to connect people and believes the team is stronger together. I am blessed to work alongside Lily every week, and I look forward to further collaborations with the district. So that was the nomination I received from Diana Lomenzo, and I couldn't agree more. Those words about Lily, it was like she was at the gate, she was hired for the position. And I just picture like the racehorses ready to jump out of the gates and get moving in the right direction. Just, extremely collaborative, communicates tremendously well, really, really creative and innovative too, and helping to bridge barriers for students and families. Even giving me little reminders about maybe put the translation at the top of your message so that, so that the parents know that it's there. Just like little things like that that I didn't even think of. And just being so mindful with with the work with Mr. Lewandowski and the whole, with equity, SEL, the district school climate committees. So tremendous. So I couldn't agree more with Ms. Lomenzo, and I don't want to take away your thunder. Thank you so much for nominating Lily Cornell. So we do have awards that will be sent out. They're still being printed, but they're going to be sent to all of you in your different locations and for you to put on your wall as the first of our Portrait Pioneers. So congratulations to Lily Cornell. Our next Portrait Pioneer, we do have 3 tonight. This nomination came from one of our parents, or I guess both parents are with us tonight. So Rachel Merritt, would you like to introduce yourself, Mr. Merritt?
Hi, how are you this evening?
There you go.
Thanks for both joining us tonight. It's very kind. We're happy to have you with us. So I'm going to read what you wrote in your nomination. Hope you don't mind. Is that okay?
Please.
That's fine.
Okay. This nomination is for Morgan Campbell. So Morgan, who works at Wheeler. Hopefully I got that right. I sometimes make mistakes. People move, but Morgan Campbell, I know, works at Wheeler. Morgan has gone above and beyond to help facilitate a program for our child in the midst of these extraordinary circumstances. Due to health issues, we chose to keep him fully remote, but with Morgan's help and the rest of the team, Cheryl Hart, Kelly Anino, Melissa Dominic, and Leanne Ayot, we've been able to have in-person services for him one-on-one in a way that continues to be meaningful. We are grateful for her advocacy in finding ways to compromise, like having in-person services on a picnic bench outside, to setting aside a room for him. She continually thinks outside of the box for him and her other students. She goes beyond the requirements and goals set in his IEP and finds ways to meet our concerns and keep his progress moving forward in a time where there are so many kids in other districts falling behind. We know that it is because of her amazing heart for her students and her ability to work with the parents and district that keeps our little man progressing towards his goals. I can't think of a more meaningful, as a former special education teacher and just any teacher coming from a parent, such kind things about the hard work you're doing. So I want to thank both of you, Mr. and Mrs. Merritt, and Morgan, congratulations on this well-earned honor. And then Morgan is here, right? I don't have everybody on my screen. She was here. Yeah, I know she's there. Hey, Morgan, thank you. Congratulations. And finally, nominated by high school science department leader, instructional leader, Mr. Fusco, Ken Fusco, nominated John Serwinski, PHS science teacher, among other things, class advisor, right? Class advisor and much more. John models the epitome of the portrait of the graduate. He is a leader in the science department and specifically biology. He exemplifies collaboration and communication while planning and carrying out lessons in biology. His ability to be innovative is outstanding. He has created lessons that are rigorous, informative, and interactive while maintaining engagement with students. An example is his use of Google Slides as an interactive medium that has allowed students to maintain Plainville's high standards of education. John has shared these with other members of the department. Students enjoy his ability to make lessons enjoyable while still learning concepts. An example of his intuitive, upbeat demeanor is how he embraces SEL with his 10-second weekend, where each student is given 10 seconds to tell how they are feeling and what they did over the previous weekend. It is so ingrained in his classes that students remind him. I think that speaks to John, what I know about Mr. Serwinski, John, Mr. Serwinski, did I hire you originally? I think I might have been part of that. I did. And
Yeah, you did.
I know. Mr. Serwinski is a tremendous, high energy, upbeat colleague. And, you know, I think, well, first of all, congratulations, Mr. Serwinski. So every member here tonight, Ms. Campbell, Mr. Serwinski, and Ms. Corniel, I think you are the perfect start to the Portrait Pioneer Award. And I just want to congratulate you and thank you for exemplifying and modeling those portrait of the graduate qualities we're hoping to really instill in our students from the time they begin in preschool in Plainville schools all the way until they graduate, because, you know, being collaborative, communicative, innovative, mindful, and resilient are those qualities are going to help our students to be a strong and powerful part of our civilization, a civil democracy, and, you know, try to combat some of the things we're seeing in our world, you know, and just making the world a better place. So it starts with our educators and our staff. So thank you very much. Congratulations. And at this time, I'm going to let all of you go enjoy the rest of your night and probably get back to lesson planning or whatever else you were doing before. So thank you. And thank you for our special guests, our nominators.
Thank you for letting us be a part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for our special presentations, Chairperson Tyrell.
All right. So can you hear me now? All right, I think I'm back.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So I did want to add my congratulations. Those guys, that was awesome. And it's nice to have some special presentations.
Great.
Moving on, we're at approval of minutes, and we do have two sets of minutes here, one for our December meeting and the other one for the curriculum subcommittee that was held last week. Does someone want to make a motion for these minutes?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I move we approve the minutes of the December 14th regular meeting of the Plainville Board of Education as submitted.
All right, that's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And that was Deb.
Yes.
All right, is there any corrections or questions on the minutes? All right, hearing none, I'm going to ask everyone to vote aye in favor.
Aye.
And are there any oppositions? Please say no. All right, that's unanimous. You want to go with the next set of minutes, Mr. White?
Certainly. Request that we approve the minutes of the Board of Education special meeting of the Curriculum Committee on January 6, 2021, as submitted.
Second.
And Deb, second. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any corrections on this one? All right, hearing none, I would ask all in favor vote aye.
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 And are there any nays? All right, thank you. It sounds like it was unanimous. That brings us to citizens' comments, and I know that we had opened up a line, correct, Kevin, so that if someone had wanted to put a comment forward, we would see it. They would have sent it to us. Am I correct in that assumption?
That is correct. I can double check. I have not seen any come
Okay.
through. There's one attendee, it's Mr. Coe. So, and then there's the live YouTube video, but.
Okay. So the other thing I would just say before we move off of citizens' comments, I noticed when we went out of the last meeting at the 6 o'clock meeting, did you notice how many comments were there? Was there something else besides the one question?
It was just the one question that was in the questions area. I put it into the comments chat area to make sure people saw it. Steve responded back. Unfortunately, that was to just the panelists. I copied it and sent it to all of the attendees as well. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Boy, you're really efficient there, Kevin. Thank you.
I tried.
So we don't have any citizens' comments. We normally have council liaison. I don't think I saw Ms. Puglisi.
Yeah, Mrs. Puglisi emailed me and Joan to let me know she would not be able to join tonight, but she said
Okay.
the last council meeting had a lengthy work session regarding the White Oak proposals from Lorero Associates, which covered the submissions from D'Amato Meyer and the Manafort teams. More information will be forthcoming. And she's looking forward to joining the Board of Ed budget work sessions, which we'll share with her as well. So that was it from Chairperson Puglisi.
All right, thank you very much. So that brings you to the superintendent's report. So you can take it from there.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to welcome and you all know Vicki Trzynski, our Director of Special Services. Vicki does a tremendous job, and we've had some reasons to celebrate within her department. With that department, it can be a very difficult, very challenging job. Well, it is a very challenging job, and her counterpart, Christina Kiley, Supervisor of Special Services. It's a very difficult job, and there's never a shortage of things to do and compliance to be aware of with special education and all student services. So Vicki is here to share a compliance report and some special education or student services updates with the Board of Education tonight.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for letting me join you this evening. Again, my primary goal is to talk about the annual performance report, but I also want to give you some updates on some of the work we've been doing in our special education department. As you can see here in our graph, our Plainville identification rate for students with disabilities continues to be relatively stable, while this overall prevalence rate for the state continues to climb pretty significantly. So we are currently, this data represents the 1920 school year, where we had 12.9% of all students in Plainville identified as students requiring special education. The state has, again, made another pretty significant jump to 15.6% across the entire state. So we're very proud of the fact that that partnership with special education staff and our general education teachers continues to help kids to really participate in the regular ed environment. I just want to go back to that and just say that 12.9% does represent 300 students across the district, most of whom are placed here in the district, but some outplacement kids as well. All right, next slide. The next slide describes the different disability categories. Federal legislation requires that all students with disabilities be identified in one of 14 categories. This graph shows the primary categories, the largest areas of identification for students with disabilities in comparison to the state. As you can see, that Plainville continues to identify fewer students with learning disabilities. And we believe that's because of the strong scientific research-based interventions that the district provides for all students. So as a result, those special education rates in all the other areas tend to be a little bit lower. In comparing our own data from last year, we continue to see that we are identifying increasing numbers of students with autism and students with emotional disturbance. We also think that this aligns very much to the district's increased focus on social emotional learning for all students, but it does also imply that we may need to continue to build our continuum of supports and services for students who aren't meeting those expectations for social and emotional learning. When we look at the annual performance report, again, I've mentioned this to you in each year when I come to talk to you about it, that this represents data from the 18-19 school year. So the data is already over 2 years old when we get it in July of each year. And however, it does talk about the overall trends. And so I want to make sure that we're looking at those trends. The district continues to meet the requirements. The annual performance report for both the state and the federal level really talks a lot about the compliance issues. So you'll see here, we have no significant discrepancy in suspension and expulsion rates for students with disabilities. We have no disproportionate representation by racial or ethnic groups. as a result of inappropriate identification. So basically saying that we have, that we haven't followed all of the guidelines and rules. We have been determining eligibility within the established timelines. We're meeting all of our requirements for kids who are coming into the district at age 3. And we are also appropriately developing transition goals and services for students who are preparing to exit special education after they finish their high school careers. While compliance is really important, I think it's important, this is one of my proudest data points, is that we continue to provide over 70% of all special education students have more than 80% of their day in the regular ed classrooms with their non-disabled peers. This is no easy task, given all the demands on the general education teachers and the amount of collaboration that's needed for all school staff to work together so that students with disabilities can really feel a true sense of belonging to the school community. I think the merits really spoke very well to kind of the efforts that are required in order to make each student feel supported and included. The special education has been exceptionally challenging under COVID conditions. And so during the COVID pandemic, we really kind of everything came to a stop for the special education department. In case you're not familiar with the special education process, in order to be identified as a student requiring special education services, each student has to be identified by a multidisciplinary team in all areas of suspected disability. So we are looking at individualized assessments by, at the very least, likely a school psychologist, special education teacher, related service providers like our speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, all who have to work individually and meet with each student to do that individualized testing. Once a student is identified, we have to meet with each family at least every 365 days. And in most cases, we meet at least a couple of times a year in order to stay in compliance with those things that I just described on our annual performance report. So if you can imagine during the pandemic when we were not allowed to have any meetings or work together, a lot of this work came to a standstill. At the end of the school year, we had 62 incomplete annual reviews, which are those 365-year meetings, and 77 incomplete evaluations. When we came back to the school year, the mandate from the state was, okay, now you have to make all of those up. In addition to the work that our staff already do for each school year, our staff were able to complete, by October 1st, we only had 19 PPTs left and 31 evals, and every single one of those were completed by the December 4th deadline from the state. And really, it's just a heroic effort in order to make all of those compliance requirements come together by that deadline. So if you can imagine, we basically did 5 months worth of work in less than 2 months, plus the regular work that is required every year already. I'm pretty proud of that team. Next slide, Kevin. In addition to sort of the compliance issues, we really had to develop some innovative special education programs for both in-person and remote learning and related service delivery options. So if you can imagine a teacher with a caseload, a special education teacher might have between 12 and 18 students on their caseload. They would need to create between 1, 2, or 3 different lesson plans for each child for each day to kind of get through the day, and have to do that sometimes remote, sometimes in person, sometimes both. And it really was very time intensive. What I was most impressed with was the creativity. We had teachers who were using bed sheets to turn into whiteboards so that they could pin the visuals up so that kids could follow along. We had teachers using their tools around the house to role play and to use kitchen utensils to teach measurement. And my favorite, though, was when we had the family pets, sometimes the family children, being able to help support the student engagement and using a lot of their in-home activities as reinforcers for kids and to order to engage them to come to the screen. While some of our teachers had sort of reduced whole class instruction, our special education teachers were required by law to continue to implement the IEPs as they were written, designed to be in the regular classroom. So most of our special education teachers spent 5 to 6 hours every day on video screens, really trying to engage kids in that work. And so again, that was a priority. Last one. The final sort of priority and challenge for the department was to effectively use assessment strategies and progress monitoring to show student growth towards IEP goals and objectives. Again, over the last school year, we have less data than we've had in the past. Keep in mind that the purpose of special education is to make sure that all kids with disabilities are making progress towards the grade level standards. But when we didn't have as much information in this last couple of years, we've had to do some very creative activities. So we've had, again, teachers doing much more real world application and really seeing how the students with disabilities are able to apply their skills in a variety of situations, both inside and outside of school. It can't be said enough that special education is not a place, it's a service, and that it really requires the efforts of the entire school community in order to be able to meet the needs of students with disabilities. And it is that teamwork that makes the dream work, and it requires everybody working together. I've been really so proud of this district in being able to meet not only the compliance requirements, but the social emotional requirements and the needs of all of our kids while we do this very difficult work. Well, that's what I have to share with you today. Any questions?
Vicki, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, I couldn't remember if I muted myself. One of the slides, one of the earlier slides that you showed us said significant discrepancy in suspension and expulsion. What do they mean by that?
It means that, so if our identification rate is that 12% of all students have our special education, it's not that 60% of our expulsions or suspensions are special ed. It had been an issue in the past in which there was most of the kids who were being suspended or expelled were kids who were identified for special education. And we've been able to take that discrepancy down through primarily the use of our PBIS strategies and our ruler training, social emotional work to prevent kids with disabilities from being excluded from school.
Gotcha. I understand that. Well,
Okay, I just had one quick question.
Sure, please.
During the time that we were in total remote or in hybrid, were most of the special needs students, were they also remote, or were some of them also within buildings?
So in the spring, we were 100% remote. When we moved to hybrid, we did include a very small number of kids who required really different instruction. So they weren't really accessing the regular ed instruction with their classroom teachers. So we did include kids who needed, probably at least half of their day or more in that highly specialized environment. Kids with pretty significant developmental delays, kids with significant autism, those kinds of things. So from hybrid point on, we did try to include everybody, those most significant kids here in the school. Again, most of those kids had like one-to-one paraprofessionals or, a lot of adult support.
That was 4 days a week, Vicki?
It was Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday as the remote day.
Same as the pre-K group.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's an excellent job that's being done.
Very, very proud of really everybody and their hard work that they put in.
Yeah, there's coming from that, career path as a former special ed teacher and department leader, and never in Vicki's position because I was never brave enough. It's an incredibly difficult job, for each of those 300 students, there's a story. So, you know, and there's a life and there's outcomes you want for every student. So nobody works harder at that than Vicki and Christina, who's here tonight, and the entire team, just really committed to that. And couldn't be more proud of our special ed staff and our, you know, all the work that we've done through everything in normal times and in COVID times. It's been really incredible. So thank you, Vicki.
And again, I want to thank the board for your support, because truly it's a great honor to be able to work with families and to be able to know our families and to know those stories. I think oftentimes I talk with other directors who work in much bigger districts and don't have the opportunity to have those connections, those community connections. I think that is what makes Plainville very special, not just for special ed, but for so many of our families.
Thank you. Our next presentation is from high school principal extraordinaire Carl Johnson. He will be presenting on the PHS strategic update, or the state of PHS address. You know, he took a different approach this year, and you know, I think he did a great job. So you can let me know what you think. But you know, we've been under tremendous leadership at the high school. You know, under Mr. Johnson's leadership and his team. You know, he's probably, well, if not the most approachable principal, you know, I've ever known. I tried to be approachable, but he's got me beat by a lot. Carl's incredible. So, you know, I just appreciate the hard work that he does. Nobody cares about kids more than Mr. Johnson. So with that introduction, Mr. Johnson, the floor is yours to share your PHS strategic update.
Thank you very much, Mr. LePage. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. First off, I just wanted to thank the Board of Education for allowing me to present tonight. You know, as I've said in years past, it's one of my honors to be able to speak about Plainville High School and the pride I take in our high school here. So what I want to do is just provide a little update about the high school this year, also give at the end a little update about our next steps. And so we'll kind of jump right into the presentation. So on the next slide, what you can see is just, you know, I always like to give a little update about PHS, just strictly numbers wise. So I don't know if you remember last year, but we had a situation where the classes, the lower classes were larger. What's happened is that we've balanced out. Our classes range from 160 to 178 students, and they all fall right in there. So really our grades have kind of leveled out. In the past, our upper class grade was the smallest, going down to the ninth grade class. Kevin, if you can go to the next slide. Just also quickly too, just an update about staffing at PHS. We continue to have 11 academic departments, 60 teachers. Not much of this has changed from last year. The one thing I would draw your attention to is the addition of a school counselor because of the creation of the SHAPE program, which I'll talk about a little bit later when we go through school counseling. But pretty much in terms of staffing, everything else has remained the same at the high school. The next slide shows you some PSAT data. You know, I caution you with this year just because we did have quite a disruption at the end of the year. And then we have administered the PSAT in the fall. And we will continue to do it for ninth graders in the spring. And we definitely hope to administer our school day SAT in March. What I have here is the class of 2021. So their cohort data over time. Like I said, the SAT school day was actually this year, we did it in September as a makeup day for the one that was missed in March. We had about half of our students take that. So although, you know, it was a good sampling of our students, and I think the data is pretty reliable, I just want to be very transparent about that. But as you can see in years past, we continue to have growth year to year from cohort. And so you can see that continued growth over time. On the next slide, you can see the classes of 2022 and 2023. I haven't included any data here for the class of 2024 because, like I said, we'll be doing their PSAT in the spring. Traditionally, they would have taken their PSAT in the fall, but we delayed it due to just the number of students we wanted to have in the room and the number of teachers to supervise it. So they'll be taking their PSAT in the spring with the school day SAT. And again, you can see year-to-year growth by cohort, and we continue to see that growth, and we look forward to seeing, especially the school day SAT results in March. On the next slide, just a quick update about safety and security at PHS, and I'll spend a little more time talking about health and safety. But we always like to give a little update about safety and security at PHS just because of how seriously we take it. I want to thank the Board of Education and Superintendent LePage and Assistant Superintendent Lewandowski, and also our incredible facilities department. This summer, we completed a secure entrance to PHS. I know many of you probably haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I tried to capture it and do a photo. So now when you enter PHS, you actually enter directly into the office. You no longer have access to the main part of the school through the main entrance. It really increases our security in the building. We're very happy to have it in place. And again, I just thank the Board of Education for their support in that. That entrance, when people get a chance to see the building, it allows us to basically secure the entire area without allowing someone access to the rest of the building or any of the hallways. And so that's been in the making for a few years, and it's really a big advancement for us. I also want to highlight our continued partnership with SRO Garrett and the Plainville Police Department. You will notice a name change there because SRO Martin got married. So we're getting students and staff recognizing the new name. Also, to our increased cooperation with outside agencies and groups. We're very proud of the partnership that's been made with Cornerstone Counseling, our partnership with the Plainville Coalition, our partnership with Wheeler, our partnership with a whole bunch of other organizations that are out there that really allow us to provide for our students, and we see as part of the safety of our building in that sense. And then also the continued use of technology resources. I just really wanted to give a praise to Mr. Ross and his team. We started the rollout of using barcode scanners for checking students into the bathroom. This really came out of the need for contact tracing, but we're already looking at other ways to use it in the building to take accurate attendance for students and where they are in the building. I really just want to give a praise to them because we had looked at other systems that would have cost a significant amount of money to implement. And Mr. Ross and his team were able to do it for pretty minimal cost using hardware we already had and by creating some of the programming themselves. On the next slide, I just wanted to take a moment to highlight the work that went into reopening PHS this year. And I know I had a chance to talk about it earlier in the year when we spoke to the Board of Education, but I did really want to highlight all of the hard work that went into it, all the way from the Board of Education down to central office administrators, to our facilities department, to the administration at PHS, to our teachers, to our families, to our students, everyone who's put in effort to make sure that PHS is open and stays open. And I just put a sampling of photos there of the different things that we've had to put in place. In many ways, PHS looks different this year, but I would argue in many ways it's still Plainville High School that people know. And I think our students have really come to realize how much they appreciate being at PHS when they're able to. On the next slide, I think one of the things we pride ourselves on here at PHS is our creativity and flexibility in responding to our current situation with the pandemic. I didn't want to, I know we had presented last year, and I think people know the different ways we responded last year. But I did want to highlight some things we've done this year. Our virtual open house and our parent-teacher conferences. One of the things you're going to hear me mention a little bit later too is what we kind of see as positive disruptions. In other words, things that have come out from this that now we realize we should be doing into the future as well. And one of the big ones we talked about was for parent-teacher conferences, especially offering a virtual option for families so that they can join. And you're going to see that a little bit later too with the school counseling. We've been able to offer virtual career explorations for students, college visits, family workshops. The way we've been able to adapt our clubs, activities, Coach Farrell, our athletic director, has done an incredible job with athletics, which has been an incredibly difficult, situation to overcome. And he's, I would argue he's done that as about as good as any athletic director in the state. We had a modified class competition, which, every year is one of the events that students look forward to probably the most right before Thanksgiving break. Something we pride ourselves on is that we are able to involve all students. So not just the students that were in person, but also the students that were remote. And it should probably come as no surprise that Mr. Zawinski, who was one of the Portrait Pioneers, was the student council advisor who oversaw that. We also had a modified Veterans Day program. We weren't able to do the Veterans Day breakfast that we normally do, but we were able to do some different programs. One of the ones that was, I think, a huge success was having families submit photos of veterans and their stories. And we played that as a montage for our students. And we've already talked about that. That's going to become a new tradition on Veterans Day for us at PHS. Also, the different student celebrations and awards. Coming up in a few weeks, we're going to have our Student Rocks celebration at PHS. So trying to make sure that we do not lose those things. And then also, too, as we start to look at second semester, and really as we start to celebrate our seniors at PHS, all the different activities and the different celebrations we're going to put in place for those seniors. I personally, I would put what PHS did and what our community did for our seniors last year up against any community. And I know we're going to do the same this year. And we also, we're already in the planning phases, working with our advisors, working with our students, making sure that we're getting ready for all those activities and celebrations that are upcoming. On the next slide, I just wanted to highlight our school counseling department actually had sent out a needs assessment to our students right before the break. 71% of our students responded. And I just highlighted a couple responses there. So when asked, I feel supported at PHS, 94.9% of our students responded yes. They responded affirmatively. I feel respected at PHS, 94.5% of our students responded positively to that. My teachers and other adults at PHS truly care about me. Again, we had 94.9% of students respond positively to that statement. I feel comfortable at PHS, 95.8% of students responded positively to that. And I am afraid to be in school. And we had 94.3% say no. That was a yes or no question. And we actually asked students who said yes, we asked them a follow-up. And the majority of them cited concerns about COVID and fears about the pandemic, which is understandable. Obviously, I'd love all those to be 100%. But I also think, being a realist in the situation we're in, I'm very proud of those numbers. And I think it speaks to what our staff and our teachers and all of our support staff have done this year. On the next slide, you'll see our school improvement goals for this year. They remain very similar to last year. One of the ones, though, that we did take away was our attendance goals, just due to the current situation and our flexibility that we need to put in place for attendance. We took the two district theories of actions, and you can see those are the two first school improvement goals there. Continued use of learning targets, increased use of interventions, implementation of the vision of the graduate, and increased student voice and choice. Those last three come directly from our NEASC visit, which we'll talk about in a second as well. So from November 15th to November 18th, we had our decennial NEASC visit. This will probably be a NEASC visit to remember for all of our times in education. The visit was fully remote. So the visiting team, no visiting team members were actually present inside the school. They did it fully remote from their home locations. Kevin, you can go to the next slide. The main focus of the NEASC visit was our self-designed priority growth areas, which you could see those last three of our school improvement goals. Those were our priority growth areas. And I'll talk about each one of those just a little bit. And also a real focus on teaching and learning here at PHS. The visiting team met virtually with over 30 students. They looked at student work, general questions. This was just a random sampling of students at PHS. They also spoke to other stakeholders. And I think impressively for the visiting team, they visited almost every teacher's classroom at PHS. They were able to jump in virtually into classrooms and observe classrooms for brief visits. We're still awaiting the final report, but once that report is finalized and shared with us, we will obviously be sharing with that community as NEASC requires us to do. I just wanted to report out quickly on our 3 priority areas. The first of our priority areas was response to intervention. Kevin, you can switch to the next slide. Thank you. We approached our response to intervention, otherwise RTI, and really focusing on tier 2 interventions, but we approached it from multiple angles. And so not only our social emotional supports that we put in place and all the social emotional work that's been done district wide and also at PHS, also through the use of different academic supports we've put in place and continue to put in place and continue to refine and think about new academic supports we can put in place, but also courses and programming at PHS. And just to highlight a few of them, like I mentioned, the SHAPE program, our collaboration with Plainville Youth Services, the use of the math lab, peer mentoring, job shadowing. We did a program with CCMC on a culture of healthy relationships, and also our collaboration with the Ruler program. So NEASC felt like we had done quite a bit of work on that, and we still have continued growth we'd like to do, but we were proud of the work we had done. On the next slide, obviously I think everyone was well aware that we have adopted a portrait of the graduate at this point, and our goal now is to implement it fully at PHS. We've been working on that this year and really kind of, the best way I can put it is living with it a little bit and getting used to the language and getting the ideas of the language out there. And then next year, really looking at how we're going to assess it and how we're going to hold students, accountable and know that they've met these skills or striving towards these skills by the time they graduate high school. And so we really want to embed it in the culture of PHS, and we've begun that work. And that'll be work over time, but we're very excited about this, and also the way that the portrait of the graduate really works with so much of the other things that we're doing, which we really think is critical. The last priority growth area was student voice and choice. So there's a lot of different ways we've been trying to include voice and choice into our high school. Whether it be from academic electives. We have some awesome groups that have really started to involve students in advisory boards, like the library advisory board. The theater tech club has basically started to run an enterprise where they're the ones who actually rent out the auditorium, and the students really run that when we were able to. The different honor societies. One of the things we got a good amount of praise for was involving students in the hiring process. Having teachers teach in front of students and then getting student feedback for applicants, the senior exit interviews we do, the focus groups we do with students, the shadowing that we've done with students. All of these things are things that we want to continue doing. Just one I wanted to highlight was the creation of the Social Justice Club this year, and especially their partnership with the new EL equity position that's really been helpful and is really helping us here at PHS. I just want to go through some department highlights. I always ask the departments to give some updates and some highlights each year. And so first up, we have the fine arts. I think especially when we talk about the art classes, and I'm not going to read all the bullet points, but one of the main things they wanted to highlight was the way that students have adapted and the way that teachers have adapted, especially students who have been remote. And obviously, some courses translate better to remote work than others. It's very hard to translate ceramics to a remote situation, but our teachers have done an incredible job of working on that and doing that. And I think, one of the things the art teachers really wanted to highlight was the way that the art rooms continue to be a safe place for students at PHS and a place that they feel like they own, which is so incredibly important to our students. On the next slide, you'll see fine arts for the music. Again, you know, an incredible amount of flexibility and creativity to keep music alive at PHS during really difficult times. Kevin, if you could play, I think it's about a minute long clip.
To go before I sleep, before I sleep. It was harder than the head of Uncle Bucky, heavy as a sermon of preacher Lucky. One's enough to give the whole state of Kentucky a great big belly ache. It was denser than a drove of barnyard turkeys, tougher than a truckload of all beef jerky, drier than a drought in Albuquerque, Grandma's killer fruitcake.
So, you know, that clip, and I thank Mr. Helming for putting that together. You know, obviously you can see both Mr. Helming and Mr. Talata have really had to adapt and use a lot of creativity to overcome a lot of the challenges of doing music right now. And they continue to do so. But, you know, as I think is very clear to everyone, you know, those places, again, provide a place for students that they own and a safe place for students. That's incredibly important for those groups to still be operating. On the next slide, the English department. It's probably better to listen to that again instead of listen to me. So the English department continues to really evolve their senior electives, really based on student choice. One of the real highlights of the English department is how much they've committed to student choice in terms of assessments, also the selection of readings that students choose. They've partnered with Mrs. Peichel, our phenomenal library media specialist, and they've done a great job of really changing the way students think about English class and how they approach text. And from that, we've seen a dramatic increase in reading among our students, and also circulation of books from our students, and also the adoption of new technology that teachers have been using to connect not only with their in-person students, but also their remote students. The Learning Commons obviously had to go through some transformations this year. On the next slide, we've spaced out the room to use it during study halls. That's traditionally how students access the Learning Commons, was during study halls, but it has a different feel in the sense that students aren't able to socialize in the same way they were in years past. Like I mentioned, our library media specialist has done a great job. One of the real highlights is the PHS Tech Tips that she shares with our faculty and staff, really providing tech tips that come in from other teachers, but also many of them coming from Mrs. Peichel herself that she shares to help us during this time of remote learning. The math department really wanted to highlight the creation of the Math National Honor Society, which rounds out our National Honor Societies at PHS. They have 35 students who've been approved and are participating in bi-weekly meetings. The Summer Algebra 2 program was fully remote this summer, and 14 students moved on to honors pre-calculus. The math department also next year will be offering a section of honors algebra 1. And that, what I'm excited about there is it shows students who are moving from geometry up to an honors algebra class. And so really trying to meet student needs and just showing the growth that students are making. In terms of physical education teachers have had to adopt their curriculum to follow health and safety guidelines. So that's meant a real emphasis on activities that allow for social distancing, allow for not large groups of students participating together at one time, but really trying to maximize the amount of space. When they can, they're outside. If not, they're using large indoor spaces. And also, I think, very important is also really keeping students who are remote active at home, and doing that through the use of daily logs to show activity and to show that they're getting physical activity even when they're not in school. The science department, a couple quick highlights. Freshmen next year will have the option to take biology and planet Earth concurrently. School counselors will be talking to 8th graders and their parents about if that makes sense for them based on what their goals are in high school, especially students who already know or have an inkling that they might want to go down a science field or a science pathway. It opens up the options for them to start taking more science classes. And also the 2023 graduation standards also help with that too. Again, a lot of adoption of technology. One of the major things being the issue that a lot of the labs that we traditionally can't be done in the way they are, just because of how students would gather around a lab table in very close proximity to each other. So really finding new and creative ways to do that. And I also just wanted to highlight the Science National Honor Society and their work to raise donations for the Plainville Food Pantry. The Social Studies Department, has really been working on revising projects and assessments, to have meaning for all students at PHS. Also continued their work on SAT reading and writing, and continuing to build assessments and projects that really hit those skills for SATs. And then, as we've talked about, and as the curriculum committee we met about, the Social Studies Department looks forward to the African American, Black, Puerto Rican, and Latino Studies course, which was created by CERC and should be adopted by the state later this month. And at the latest would be started at PHS or institute at PHS in the 2022-2023 school year. For special education, I know Mrs. Trzynski was going to speak tonight. One of the major things they wanted to highlight at the high school was the transition program, not only for our students who are 18 to 22, but also the students who in their special education classes work on transition at the high school. Really looking at the transition curriculum and assessments for every grade level at PHS, making sure they're meeting their goals for that. Mrs. Turkowitz, who I think all of you know, joined on as a transition specialist to engage with families. And, really working on those real world scenarios for students, both who are in the transition program and in regular ed classes at PHS. The school counseling department just really wanted to highlight, they implemented, or I should say they piloted, I'm sorry, I skipped over Unified Arts there. Unified Arts, again, very similar, adapting instruction, different skills, different instruction assessments that they're doing. Expansion and refinement of the business offerings at PHS. This is something we're looking at for next year to kind of reinvigorate some of the business offerings, also with the financial literacy requirement in the 2023 graduation standards. So all those things are happening, and really a continued focus on CTE education and experiences. And one of the things that we'll be doing, and Mr. Lewandowski has put a lot of work into, is the adoption of pathways and clusters into our programs of studies, so that students have an idea of what they're working towards when they graduate high school. The school counseling department this year piloted the use of Google Classroom. Again, I mentioned earlier that idea of positive disruption. Using Google Classroom for an entire grade to keep all students organized about what is happening in school counseling for their grade level. And so for this year, they used it with the seniors, and the plan is to roll that out for all of their grade levels. So a lot of the information they want to share, or kind of that needs to go to everyone, they're going to start using Google Classroom to do that. Access to counselor availability through Calendly. This was a major change for school counselors and how they have students and families sign up for appointments, and they've completely switched over to this. So students can go on and sign up for appointments with their counselors, and school counselors are reporting that's led to an increase in family engagement through this. Also participation in virtual meetings at night and, financial aid night, career info sessions, the shift to virtual. And like I had mentioned earlier with our open house and parent teacher conferences, this is something that we're already talking about, keeping a virtual option in the future, just because of how we've seen how much it helps with some families to be able to participate in these meetings. Instead of having to drive to the high school or, take a longer period of time off of work to get to the high school, to be able to sign in remotely for some families is, the best option. Continued development of needs assessments, like you saw earlier, check-ins, all the things we do to make sure, to try to identify as best we can the students who need more support at PHS. And then also one of the things we'll be doing very shortly is implementing post-secondary discussions inside students' subject area classrooms. So teachers will be talking about what a student can do with a major in their field. So if you're in a history class, they'll be talking about what you can do with a major in history, in science classes, and math classes, and the CTE classes, which we hope will get students thinking about post-secondary plans. I just really wanted to highlight the SHAPE program at PHS, which I mentioned earlier. I put a little quote up there from Mr. Valera. I asked him to provide me some details. And so you can see it fits very well in line, not only with our Portrait of the Graduate, but the SEL work that we're doing. We had 17 students in the initial pilot this semester. We expect to double that next semester. That's faster than we were expecting, but there's been a real, I think, a real emphasis on seeing that this program fills a real need for our students. And so we're getting a lot of referrals for it and a lot of students who want to be a part of it. For the 17 students who have been part of it this semester, we've seen a significant decrease in student absences, behavioral referrals, and also an increase in academic performance. Something I take a lot of pride on is that we had 6 students who, for the first time ever, either made honor roll or moved up an honor roll level. And I think that's in many parts due to their participation in SHAPE. Mr. Valera also wanted to highlight that he's had 55 times where students have come down to the SHAPE room for de-escalation because of something that was going on either during the school day or in their lives that they needed help processing, which is obviously a huge help as well. The World Language Department, just wanted to continue. The World Language Department has done an incredible job of adapting the Portrait of the Graduate. They're probably the department that's out the furthest in front of that, and they're continuing to do a lot of work on that. And also their work with the Seal of Biliteracy, so that students can add that onto their diplomas. They added on their website. They take a lot of pride in updating their website and making sure that families know what is happening in the World Language Department. Just to finish up, I just want to mention some of our next steps at PHS and just kind of let you know where we're going. Obviously, I've mentioned it a few times, but implementation of the Portrait of the Graduate, that's going to be a major piece of our work over the next couple of years and making sure that really embeds itself into the culture of our school. Our continued growth in social emotional learning. We will be rolling Ruler out to students in 2021, and we want to make sure we do that right. We're getting ready for the students who are coming up to us who have already had Ruler as part of their lives in the PCS schools, and we want to get that in place here as well. Our focus on student voice and choice, especially when it comes to post-secondary planning and academic planning. So really getting students and families to have voices in what they want as goals of coming out of high school. I think a major theme you've probably heard me talk about over the past year is the amount of choice that we want students to have and to really think about what they want to get out of their experiences at PHS. We don't want it to be a one size fits all for every student. We want them to really think about what they want. Continued growth in student assessment instructional practices with a heavy emphasis on equitable outcomes. So making sure that we have as many students as we can taking the most advanced classes, seeing students really push themselves to their highest limits, taking early entrance college classes at Tunx's or Goodwin, CCSU, UConn classes, things that we can get them involved in. And then lastly, like we've talked about, the adoption of the 2023 graduation standards, which we'll be putting in place and which will drive a lot of our work as well. So that's it for my formal presentation. I did just want to take a moment. This has been a incredibly challenging year, starting in March all the way through now. I can't thank the Board of Education enough for their support during this time. I can't thank Mr. LePage and Mr. Lewandowski for their continued support. My fellow administrators at PHS and administrators across the district, they've worked incredibly hard, and I can't thank them for their advice and their support during this. I really want to thank our teachers at PHS, and I know all across the district, but especially our teachers at PHS, who have worked incredibly hard to meet the needs of not only our in-person students, but also our remote students. That was something that NEASC really highlighted when they were here, was the effort that was being put into that. Our families, this has been such an effort on a community level. And so it's not just about the work that we're doing, inside the schools, but also that the community has done to support us. And our families have just been incredible by, buying into all the different rules and the different things we've had to put in place, and supporting us here. And then lastly, because I don't get a chance to do it enough, I just want to thank our students at PHS who have truly shown so many of the skills that are in our Portrait of the Graduate, especially resiliency, and just overcoming so much in the past year and working so hard. And our students have just been incredible in terms of complying with what we've asked them to do to keep our building safe. So with that, I thank the Board of Education for the time. I apologize if I went too long, but I tend to get long-winded when I talk about PHS. And I'll obviously be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from Mr. Johnson? Thank you, Mr. Johnson. That was excellent report.
I don't know if anybody has questions. I just, there was so much in that report to be hopeful about. There was a lot of positivity there, a lot of energy, a lot of awesome changes. I saw things where students had choices that they have never had before that looked really interesting to me. I love the update on the SHAPE program and how that's coming along. And what struck me the most was the student survey numbers and the amount of students who feel comfortable at school, trust the adults in the building. Like you said, I know you want it 100%, but you had a high percentage of students take that survey, and to have those kinds of numbers, that was really great. And that means a lot, because we all know that, that's the first thing. First, you've got to have relationships and trust, and then you can teach, because without the relationships and trust, the rest of it doesn't happen. So thank you so much for all the effort that you've put in this year. I think we continue to see that everything we have to do this year is just so much more difficult, but you're finding those areas that we knew would come about, that, don't let a good crisis go to waste, as they say, where there are definitely some of the areas where we can use the virtual access to increase parent engagement in a lot of areas. So just an awesome job. Thank you so much, Carl.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Mr. Johnson? Okay. Thank you for that very thorough, and I'm thinking back on my reports, and I think I was about the same, maybe a little shorter, so I feel better now. That was actually excellent and worth every minute spent, so thank you, Carl. The last part of my superintendent's report, for the last several board meetings, I've provided just a quick or longer COVID-19 update. They're just kind of informational updates. I did send out Plainville by the numbers in my last newsletter on Friday, as well as a big thank you to our staff, including our high school staff and our entire staff, for the work that they're doing. And I'll just go through quickly. We had a pre-meeting for an hour prior to this meeting regarding COVID, and in testing options. We had some experts from Griffin Hospital join us, and comments shared by Julie Simard, our outstanding COVID liaison, who's a nurse in our district and has really taken a great leadership role, as well as Stacy Buden. And just looking at our current testing availability and options, and considering other potential options as well, and looking into some of those possible opportunities. The biggest thing is just making sure that we're constantly staying on top of every case we're made aware of, and taking all the steps with our contact tracing team to mitigate and educate and reduce any spread. So just sharing the numbers I shared in my report last week for those that didn't see it. We have 2,261 students in the district, which is about 100 or about 90 fewer than last year due to a number of reasons. We have over 400 staff members, about 430 staff members in all, so around 2,700 individuals. And I do have to report all the positive cases that we're made aware of from cohort C, our full remote students, as well as our in-person students. So these numbers do include some cohort C students who are not in school at all, who have gotten the virus outside of any interaction at all at schools. But we've had 79 days of school, actually 80 counting today, that count. As you know, we have one day to make up on the Friday, June 11th. We had 21 hybrid days to begin the year from September 3rd until October 2nd. We had 6 days of PD with staff prior to that, with staff only, thanks to the board's approval of those three school days as professional learning days to prepare our staff for the reopening. We had 51 full in-person learning days, which we are still in full in person. And we did have those 8 fully remote days, the 5 days after the Thanksgiving, the very short Thanksgiving recess. And I sent an explanation about that to all the families. And I won't reiterate that now, but basically the time, families were gathering until they went back to school was so short that any possible infections wouldn't have popped up at that point. Most likely it's possible, but not, 3 days later, not so much. Because I had been asked about why we weren't doing time off after the winter holiday break, where, the Christmas holiday anyway was about 10 days before we returned. And I'm hoping people adhered by the not getting together for New Year's Eve. Most didn't. I know I didn't do anything. And I fell asleep, I think 9:30 or 10 o'clock. That's my normal now. And we had 8, so those 8 fully remote days, the 3 days before the winter break, they gave us about 7 days before people went home to, our staff went home to families. We also, the main reason for the fully remote days, especially after Thanksgiving, was staffing. We had a lot of staffing shortages due to contact tracing, not necessarily positive cases, but contact tracing or quarantining due to travel and other related issues that really caused, every day is a staffing challenge to a degree due to all those factors, but those days especially. So that's our year so far. I have to send out the newest updates. We had 4 more cases since Friday's report, when we had 88 cases in total as of Friday. So we're at 68 students and 24 staff members. We haven't confirmed a direct confirmation of an in-school, contact that caused a spread, not to say that that's 100% foolproof. There have been possibilities of that in some situations, a limited number, but typically we know, a parent or an uncle was over and unmasked and in the same room sharing a meal, and then they had the symptoms and were tested positive as well. Like anything else, it's chicken egg, and it's not always easy to know where it originated from. But as far as looking at the numbers in our community, looking at the numbers in our town, the state, and the country, Plainville Schools is doing really well with 92 cases in a course of about 90 days since staff have returned. Actually, about 92 days since staff have 90 days since staff have returned. So about a case per day if you average it out. The mitigation strategies, as Mr. Johnson shared in his presentation, you can see, in some schools it's easier than in others at the high school level due to the inability to really cohort students to the degree that you can at the elementary level and at the middle school level, to a somewhat lesser degree than the elementary level. The spacing is much greater, so you don't have as much, you have much more social distance at the high school than at the other levels, but even still our class sizes are very small. They do vary somewhat, but the class sizes are small, and we social distance to the degree that we're able to do so as recommended by the guidance, and we're following all the other mitigation strategies. And as Mr. Johnson said, the kids have been great, families have been great in supporting what we're doing. So all in all, when we look at the big picture and the benefits our kids are getting from being in school, the guidance I'm getting directly from our health director, our local health director in the state, keep the kids in person as much as possible. Obviously, rethink that if there's an outbreak and a rapid number of cases that happen in a school or a classroom, and we haven't had any of that happen, thankfully. We're watching the new strains very carefully and how those are traveling, making sure that we don't have anything like that. And we'll have the health department meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock with the state DPH, and then I have the local DPH at 9:30, and then as well as another call at night. So tomorrow's the big day for all my updates from the state health departments and in the governor's office and everyone else. So we are on top of it on every possible level. And no situation's 100% foolproof, but I think we're doing a really good job, and I'm proud of our staff and our students and all that they're doing. So, I think that's all I have on COVID at this time. I did want to also mention the new Reader Leaders program that I promoted in the last newsletter. And I want to invite the board. I know Lily Cornell, who used some of that innovation and creativity. And, we came up with the idea of, we should really record like a bank of stories that, because our principals did such a nice job of reading to the kids during our full remote period. And I know some of them have libraries of probably 70 stories and more, probably more. And so, we said, well, it would be really cool to create a website where they could go and click on a reader that they'd like to hear from, and hear a story. So, even Mr. Lewandowski and I have some stories recorded, a couple anyway, and we're going to add to that. And you can vote for your favorite reader and, ask them to read a certain story. So I'd like to involve the Board of Education, and I'm sure Ms. Cornell will be able to add you. And we talked about that as, if a board member would like to read a story and record it on Screencastify, and then we'll put you up on the Reader Leaders website. And I'm also looking for students to add to that as well, if they'd like to read stories to their peers and parents are okay with them posting that. We're going to have like a spotlight section for kids to share stories too. We had the reading and math challenge last year, and it was a lot of fun. And then COVID hit, and it took a bit of a back seat to all the safety and all the other things we're trying to mitigate. But with the superintendent's reading, super reader challenge and all the fun things we're doing with the math games, and we don't want to lose that momentum. So this is kind of a way to help rebuild some momentum for reading, which has been outstanding in the district. Kids just are doing a great job, in our library media, Deb Peichel and colleagues, and the teachers are doing a great job of instilling a love of reading. So anyway, that's my update. If anyone has any questions on my report, I'm happy to do my best to answer those. Otherwise, that concludes my report. And again, thanks, Vicki and Carl.
All right, if there are no questions for the superintendent, we'll move on to our board subcommittee reports. But actually, I do have a question for the superintendent.
Yeah.
Do I understand that we have an additional student representative?
I was going to introduce at this point, actually. Yes, we have Garrett Millette, who comes from a famous family in town. I believe Ethan and Riley are your brothers, right, Garrett?
Yeah, they're Riley's at Quinnipiac right now, and Ethan's at UConn. So,
and of course, Mrs. Millette, Christine Millette, and his dad, Chris Millette, as subs in the district, and just a great family in town. So we're very happy to have Garrett Millette join us as the junior representative, as a board liaison, and I appreciate that, as well as, of course, Catherine Guarco, who's done a tremendous job thus far. So between the two of you, we're in very good hands from the student representation. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, welcome to both of you. And Catherine or Garrett, do you have anything you would like to offer up for your student representative report?
Sure. So here's just a little summary of what I've observed over the past week since we've come back to school. The transition back from break and into the new year has been incredibly smooth. Students easily adjusted to a normal school routine. Much discussion centered around the current political climate, especially with what occurred at the Capitol building in DC last Wednesday. Teachers, however, were very accommodating to our feelings and provided us with a safe environment to voice our opinions and concerns on the matter, which in these troubling times is greatly appreciated. Aside from this, conversations are carrying on as usual, focusing on family, friends, assignments, etc. And just looking back at past events, the only notable thing was that students returned from holiday recess last Monday on January 4th. Nothing is really going on right now at the high school aside from a meeting in the near future with the senior focus group to discuss possible events that will occur in the second semester. And a few important dates going forward. The first is Martin Luther King Day on the 18th. There will be no school. The CIAC plans on winter sports returning the following day on the 19th. And the last day of quarter 2 and semester 1 at PHS is on January 26th. The mid-year exams, which would have occurred from the 21st to the 26th, have been canceled due to the current conditions that have occurred this year. Students at PHS will begin course registration in late January. This will be for the freshmen and juniors to the juniors. It will be done online again this year using PowerSchool. The class of 2025 has an open house. It will be held virtually at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, February 3rd. And the following day, report cards will be issued. That's all I have going on here. So.
Thank you, Catherine. Garrett, is there anything you want to add or say? I didn't mean to not allow you to say anything.
I mean, I don't have anything planned for this meeting, but I just want to say I'm honored to be here. And, you know, I'm willing to be involved and get like an inside scoop to everything that's going on. I'm taking a bunch of notes. So thank you, everyone, for letting me have a position here.
Thank you, Garrett. We love having some student voice. It always reminds us of what we're doing. Sometimes, you know, we adults, we forget. So we did not have a facilities and finance subcommittee meeting since last we met. And if I'm wrong on this, somebody jump in and tell me. We also did not have a policy subcommittee meeting since we last met, but we do have a series of policies for second read that we will hopefully approve tonight. Curriculum subcommittee report. Kathy, did you want to mention anything about our meeting? I think you're still muted, Kath. I don't know why. It doesn't look like you are, but I can't hear you. No. Yeah. That's weird.
Huh. Try unplugging your headphones and replugging them in.
Because now your little muted signal came up. So maybe if you.
Now can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Leave it to Kevin. He fixes everything.
So, I mean, a lot of what we've talked about at the curriculum meeting, we've gone over a little bit of, but we met on January 6th. Mr. Johnson reviewed the new graduation requirements that will go into effect for the class of 2023. During our November regular board meeting, he gave a detailed presentation of those new requirements, and we will be voting on those requirements later in this meeting. Tawana Graham Douglas discussed the new Public Act 19-12, which directs boards of education to include elective course studies at the high school level that provide students with a better understanding of African American, Black, Puerto Rican, and Latino contributions to the history of the United States. It will be a 1-credit year-long course. There was discussion about offering this course in 21-22 school year through a field study program. The field study has not had funding yet, but would consist of summer work for teachers, creation of the curriculum, in addition to a lot of other planning and input. Mr. Lewandowski stated that Plainville would love to participate in the field study. We also reviewed potential program offerings at PHS. The administration is seeking to establish a more equitable education experience for all students, also working on curriculum for college and career pathways starting in the middle school, giving students more voice and choice in their school experience. The administration is also looking to increase offerings for high school and college credit, creating pathways of learning and helping them understand the relevance of their class to their career interest. That's it.
Thanks, Kathy. So yeah, there will be a couple of items that we did discuss that are on our agenda coming up shortly. So thank you, Kathy. We did not have an outreach subcommittee meeting. Plainville High School PAC, Mr. White, anything to report?
The next meeting is supposed to be this Wednesday at 7 o'clock, but I have not received official invite to that yet, but that was the schedule.
Okey-doke. Toflon Elementary, Ms. Martinez.
The December meeting was postponed due to winter break, so they're meeting January 21st.
Alrighty. And Lyndon, Kathy.
Not a lot to report between December and January. Their meeting is coming up this Wednesday.
Okay. And the middle school, Crystal.
Yep, they're actually meeting virtually tomorrow evening at 7 p.m.
And lastly, Wheeler, Ms. Palmieri. Nicole, you got anything?
Yep. Wheeler did some more fundraising. Prior to break, they took up a collection through Spirit Days for raising money for the Easter Seals Rally Point organization. They raised $950 to support veterans in their transition from military to civilian life. And most recently, the student council assigned each grade level a color to wear for a Spirit Day. And in turn, the students could bring in canned food items for the Plainville Food Pantry. And for the first time, they filled one of their bins in one day. It was overflowing, I'm told. So they're still doing their fundraising at Wheeler.
Awesome. Thank you. I do not have a correct report. There was not a meeting between December, and there will be one later this month. So there's no correct report. As far as the chairperson's report, I did want to thank Julie Simard and Stacy Buden for attending the meeting with us earlier, where we discussed some of the issues related to COVID and testing and whatnot, as well as a couple of representatives from the Griffin Hospital as well. And it was, very nice of everybody to jump on and have that conversation with us. So we do appreciate their time. And I think one of the things that I know I take away from it is, it's very difficult with the amount of information that you have to put out to parents about anything these days. And so I think for us to look at some ways that we can put out some information about testing and vaccines as well, to let people know, that where things will be available, whatever we can do to help spread the word or alleviate people's fears about things like having to pay for testing and having to, and there being a discomfort with the test and things like that. So anything that we can do to put out that information would be helpful, because I think for a lot of folks, the school system is a trusted source of information, and that's awesome. And then lastly, I have to say that this week it was not lost on me the importance of schools, public schools. One of the things that the reason public schools were founded in the first place was to make sure that you had an educated electorate and that people understood how the processes of government work. And, you know, the fact that people will disagree on what they think and how they feel about, you know, how our country is run, and that kind of thing is positive. It's a good thing, because in almost every situation that I've been involved with, if people have differing opinions, they usually come out with a better solution. If everybody has the same thought, you usually don't come up with, you know, as thoughtful of a decision. But when you have differing opinions, you come up with good solutions. So what we know is in this country is we can have differing opinions, and we come to resolutions, peaceful resolutions, and that is what public education is all about. That's what it teaches us. And so if we ever thought that the jobs of teachers and superintendents and boards of education were important, they're more important today than they ever have been. So I thank you all for serving on the board. I thank all of our teachers and our administrators for doing this work, because while it's a little more difficult this year than it has been in the past, it's needed more than ever. So that's it for me. Thank you. We'll go to unfinished business, and we have a request for approval of the 2023 graduation requirements. Can we get a motion?
Madam Chairman, I request that we approve the revised Plainville High School graduation requirements that are in full accord with also Public Act 17-42.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Who was that second?
Rebecca.
Oh, okay, Rebecca. I just want to make sure. I don't know if Joan can tell your voice better than me, but and Rebecca's second. Is there any questions, conversation on this before we take a vote? All right. I think we have been fully informed about it. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And then we have a series of policies. I don't know if we want to do these as a group. It's up to, I guess it's up to the motion maker, whoever wants to make a motion for policies.
Well.
David, is there any reason why we would not do them as a group?
Only if you want to pull one out.
Yeah, I mean, you could, right. If you're accepting all of them, I would do them as a group.
Yeah.
Unless there's a question about.
Unless there's a question.
These are after the second reading, so.
Yes.
It is.
Then I would request that we approve the policy changes B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J. All have been, this is their second reading, so I would move that they now be approved.
Okay. We have a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
I think that was Kathy. All right. Any questions on this or comments? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to new business, and we have the board open forum. Is there anything that anybody would like to mention?
Madam Chairman, just quickly, I would like to also welcome Garrett Millette. I've known Garrett since his days in the middle school when I had the pleasure of working in the tech booth with him on some performances. And also I've listened to him as a very qualified trumpet player, so I think he will be an excellent addition to this group. But also in that light, just to bring everyone to their mind, that on March 17th, there will be a virtual day on the Hill sponsored by CAVE. And this year might be an excellent opportunity, since we've just recently had some examples of horrific government acts, that this is a chance for, I think, both the board members and students to become aware of some of the local legislation that will be under consideration by our legislature this year, and that perhaps we could make time in our schedules to participate in this year's Day on the Hill, which will be a virtual presentation.
Anybody else? All right. We have our quarterly special education cost report, which is due for January, I think. Mr. Adlerstein, there you are.
Been hiding all this time.
We can't hear you, Sam. I think you got to plug and unplug the headphones. Like I've heard that from Kevin now. Still can't hear you, Sam.
It only works when Kevin.
There you are. There you are.
Now we hear you.
Really?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't
You're
know.
soft though. You're soft, Sam. You got to talk out. You got to volume.
Turn up the volume.
Is how about that?
Oh, that's
perfect.
Hey,
So-
your phone.
So once a quarter, we take a look at just one line on our Board of Education budget report, and that's the outplaced tuition line. We look at it because it's so volatile and it can have such a big impact on our budget. The past few years, the portfolio of special education, the everything that Vicky and her group manage, have somehow come back to budget, and we've been fortunate this year. Not so much. If we ended the year with the students that are outplaced right now, we'd be $377,807 over budget. And but just to give you a sense of the volatility, that's changed over $100,000 even just in the past month. And so there's little expectation that that's exactly where we'll end up at the end of the year. But again, we report this to you quarterly, because you need to know this. We need to keep an eye on it. We put it into the portfolio of all of our other costs to end up on budget overall. That's still our target, but this is financially an indication of the challenges that the special ed department is facing on a day-to-day basis. And Vicky, anything to add to that?
No, I think you're right. We've had a couple of kids who've either returned to district. We've had kids who have been, we have one student who was in detention, which is not part of our program, and now has to go to a special program. And they're expensive. And we have a brand new, it's not a brand new charter school student, which we've never had before, that has a lot of special needs that we have to take care of. So it is what it is.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we like to hear about it a few times a year, because we know it's so volatile, right?
Yep. At the same time, we are trying to bring a couple of kids back to district. We had talked about that, I think, at the November date. And so Christine is working actively on that. And so there may be some cost savings overall to that once we are able to do it.
A lot of cost avoidance too in our special ed department through the creative programs, the 18 to 22 program, and keeping our students in our district where they belong and getting the services they need, instead of outplacing students in other communities and other organizations and spending a lot more money for services that aren't as good. So Vicky, and as we said, Vicky and her team has done a great job.
May I just ask a question?
Sure.
How many outplacement children do we have right now?
There's
Do you know?
35, include 21 plus the assorted other, magnet and technical school outplacements, totals 35.
Okay. And how many are we looking at bringing back in? Did you just say, Vicky?
We have 2 students that we're actively working with families to pursue. Again, I think when I had given you the November report, I'm sorry, I didn't bring it right in front of me. But we had, I think, 4 families move in where the students were already placed out of district schools. And so we've been really trying to cultivate the relationships with families, show them what our programs look like here in district, and then develop those programs so those students can successfully return to the district. And I have 2 students specifically for that. And we have, I think, 1 other student that we're sort of still trying to create the program for it. If we can create the program, then we'll bring them back as well. So 2 for sure, maybe a 3rd.
Okay, and one other question. The COVID funding that we may get, can any of that be tagged for special ed because of what we had to do because of COVID and special ed, or no?
Unfortunately, none of these students are placed because of COVID conditions. So I would imagine they probably does not apply.
As far as, as far as the coronavirus relief fund, those are dollars that we spent in order to keep students in school and learning, in person. So for the students who receive special education, it wouldn't impact the outplacement students, but it does impact the students who we may have spent extra resources on to keep them learning in person in our schools, and all the resources that we've used to do that. But.
And we anticipate fully expending that grant. We got 2 COVID-related grants. The first one was for expenses only through December 30th. Right. And as you know, those expenses will continue. A lot of the personnel expenses, incremental costs will continue. So even just trending that forward, we foresee fully expending that grant.
And we'll see how the ESSER 2 grant, pans out, but that looks like a potential for quite a bit of additional resources, but we're waiting for more guidance on that.
Could I just add, as part of my report, just in the business office, we're often one step removed. We kind of get to stand back and kind of watch the fray, and I couldn't be more impressed, just by seeing what our special ed department does. But that's just one example. Just our whole district rising to the challenge, the leadership of Mr. LePage, Mr. Lewandowski, the rest of the administrators. It makes me feel very proud to be a part of this community and in this district. There's definitely something special here.
Thank you, Sam. Well, you're a big part of that too, so thank you.
Oh, shucks.
Even though I pick on you all the time. Just 'cause I like you.
Anything else on the special ed report before I move on? Everybody good? Nobody's good, but everybody understand, I guess, is what I have to say. The turf committee report, I know it's not the month for it, but Sam, you just sent a little report about I don't know if I want to call it a new development.
Yeah, I'm sorry, can I
go ahead?
Thank you. It's a follow-up from the last turf report committee report, where we told you that we were going to have our fields assessed. And so we did do that. We followed up. We reported to you that was going to happen. And it was a good move. And they made some repairs to seams in the field. They replaced the part of the infield on the softball field. And what we also realized is having professionals come out once a year to do that kind of assessment. It probably won't require repair, but to do that kind of assessment once a year will help us just make sure we're just maintaining this investment. And so this one time, the reason I reported to you is this one time we're going to charge that cost to the turf fund. In the future, it will be part of the operating budget.
Yeah, sounded like it was definitely a good move and something that can prolong the use of the field and, prolong our requirement to have major work done on it. So good move.
It's a relatively small expense to protect quite a big investment.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bucks to replace.
So the next thing on our agenda is the request for approval of the course of study for 2021, 2022. Can we get a motion for that?
That's for the new course, Becky. I think it got cut off somehow, but it's to add the African American, Black and Puerto Rican Latino course to the course of studies. So that's open as an option in case we're able to offer that based on the program through CERC. So I apologize for that. We can make a correction, but that's what that's in reference to, not the whole program of studies. I don't believe.
Okay. So maybe we can readjust that motion to say to approve that course of study, the African American, Puerto Rican, somebody want to make that motion?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I do request that we approve the addition of the Black, Hispanic, and Latino studies to the course curriculum for year 21-22.
Second.
We got a second. Thank you. Any questions or conversation on this one? This we also did discuss at the curriculum subcommittee as well. And we know that we are kind of waiting on the state for a little bit of additional information, but we anticipate that that will be coming shortly, and that'll help us in moving forward with what we're going to do.
It will be a state requirement that'll put us ahead of the game right now. I think it's in these days it is essential that this it's an essential part of the curriculum.
It's true. All right. Any other comments? All right. Can I get a vote? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. We're unanimous. And that brings us to the consent agenda. Someone like to make a motion on that one?
Madam Chairman, I request that we approve the consent agenda, items A through E.
All right. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. That was Ms. Crystal. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That makes us unanimous. And our most favorite motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Who wants to second that one?
Oh, I'll second that.
Okay. Thank you so much. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good month, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Everyone stay safe and healthy, please.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Night,
Good
everyone.
night.